All right, back live on the show floor. We're at B2B Summit from Forrester at the Marketplace. Just so excited that Forrester gave me this opportunity to be here today. Very excited for the conversation we've had so far, and really excited to be talking to Carrie Penny. She is the SVP, Global Head of Brand and Content at Valtech. Carrie, thanks so much for being here.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt.
I'm excited for this conversation for a lot of reasons. We were talking before we started about what are some of the angles we could have, and each one of these I think is really important. You were in a session earlier today with someone that we had on the show earlier today as
funny.
well. And one of the things he brought up is the concept of the 4 Ps and the fact that we're really missing a really critical P as part of marketing's prioritization moving forward. And the P is not prioritization, it is
purpose.
All right. Can you talk about what you heard there today?
Yeah, there was really one line that just super resonated with me. It was the purpose of marketing is growth, period. Another P, period. And sometimes it's easy to forget that it is that simple when you break it down to it. The purpose of marketing is growth, and I loved that.
Yeah. He was here earlier talking about that as well. And I think that can be such a unifying thing. If you can say, like, what are we really about and how does that manifest? And like every company here has limited money, limited budget, limited resources. And so strategy is what? It's choosing. It's figuring out which of those things you're going to invest in. So if we say our objective is growth, that can mean different things at different stages of the business as well. If you're early stage, net new is where it's at. As you get bigger, investing in retention and expansion becomes more important as well.
Definitely. And I think it's also a really good uniter within teams. So especially at things like Forrester's B2B Summit, you hear a lot about the challenges between working with marketing, between sales, between product. But if everybody's aligned that we all have the same goal, which is growth, it is so much easier for us to have an aligned vision. We can work together. We can share data. We are all headed in the right direction together. It breaks down those silos.
So what some people will hear that, and what they'll hear is that means I need pipeline. That means I need leads. So like focusing on a purpose, focusing on growth can be a force for good and be a force for evil. And evil is saying all we care about is MQLs. And we're talking here today with someone who owns brand and content for a company. So help me understand like that balance we need between brand and demand, that balanced marketing effort that is really optimized for growth.
Absolutely. If we're really paying attention to the changing buying behaviors, if we are going to have growth as the end goal, there's so much that leads up to that. And buying behaviors are changing, what people want, the preferences they have, the options that they have. I mean, we're sitting here on the market floor. There are so many options that exist. And so in order for them to choose you, you need trust, you need credibility, you need a relationship. And that's where content comes into play. So stop gating your very best content. And it's not just to build relationships with people and to build trust and credibility, but it is to build trust and credibility with the robots. Because AI has to be able to crawl your very best content and bring it into their models. I love looking at the reasoning model and opening it up and saying, what were all of the different sites that you went to and decided were credible to answer my question? And then I can make that decision on whether I think that that was a credible site as well. I want my site to show up on that list. And if I've gated all of my best stuff because I think that an MQL is the most important thing, I've lost the game.
Yeah. And that is easier said than done in some organizations.
Totally.
Right. And I get like even talking to people here who have been CMOs and have moved into CRO roles that understand the value of marketing the way we're talking about it. You start to focus on that monthly number. You start to focus on that quarterly board meeting or that quarterly earnings call. And I get it. But if you only focus on the short term, you will continue to pay a premium forever to build that level of growth that just isn't sustainable.
Yeah, agreed. 100%. I do understand the struggle of moving past that number. I would challenge people that if you are tracking MQLs and you feel committed to the MQL, do the work to understand what's happening with those MQLs. What is the actual conversion? If we go back to the purpose again, marketing's purpose is growth. We are failing that purpose if all we're doing is patting ourselves on the back because our MQL number is really high. We've done our job, high five, pass it off. It's not our problem anymore. If you go back to the shared vision of growth, if we aren't growing, if you're not seeing the pipeline grow, if you're not seeing acceleration through the pipeline as fast as it should be happening, we're not doing our jobs. And I would argue that the focus on MQL is what's holding us back as a marketing organization.
Oh, preach on that. We're talking today on the show floor at Forrester B2B Summit. Got Carrie Penny here. She's the Senior Vice President, Global Head of Brand and Content at Valtech. Can we talk about brand a little bit?
Yeah.
Because I think this conference is as great as it is, it very much is a demand-centric conference. A lot of the topics, it's about the buying journey. It's about building and managing pipeline. You talk to 10 people in this room and they might have 10 different definitions of what brand is and how to define and activate that in an organization. What does that look like for you at Valtech?
Yeah, I think the easy definition that people go back to is always, how does it look? What is your website like? What is your logo, colors? That is just like the basics of brand. To me, the real definition of brand is, how do you feel? And we work in a services business, and I think this is true for anybody, but particularly in services. It's, how do the people that work at that company make you feel? How does the buying process make you feel? There was a really great stat earlier today in the keynote address that said 81% of people are disappointed in the purchasing process with the winning vendor. I mean, that is that's a problem. That is a problem. And that's something.
Can you one more time for the people in the back?
Yes, 81%. That is wild for me. And so that's something I think that brand comes into play. It's, what is the experience that somebody has? Have you focused on buyer enablement, really understood the buyer and the experience that they'll have with you? That's your brand and your legacy.
Yeah, and that is everything, right? I mean, Ann Handley, who talks a lot about content and writing, says everything the light touches is content. And so every part of the experience someone has with you, it's not just the email they send, it's not just the way your booth looks as we're staring out here across the marketplace, it's the interactions, right? So think about all the time and attention that goes into the collateral and everything else. What about the conversations? What about the roles of people? What are you doing with every one of those moments? Latney from 6th Sense was talking about this earlier, about like all those little details matter. Right. And you have to get the details right so that the overall experience comes across as differentiated and, dare I say, magical.
And I think this is another great example of brand and where it comes into play. So the experience you have on this showroom floor, talking to a representative from the company, the questions they ask you, the way that they understand your journey and your challenges, how they describe the product to you, what you're going to get out of it, it should be identical to the experience you have when you're reading that same type of content on your website, when you're interacting with it on social. That is brand.
So this gets harder if you're a services business.
It is harder.
Because if you're a product company, you can engineer a product experience to be consistent for everybody. But if the product is people aren't always as consistent as you want. How do you manage a consistent experience in that kind of an environment?
Yeah, so there's a couple different experiences. There's at the very top of the funnel, just how do we describe ourselves as an organization? Right. So I recently stepped into this role, and the very first thing that we did was actually write out the narrative, which didn't exist, but write it in a way that sellers understand it and then can help our clients understand it. And we rolled out a growth academy. We just rolled it out. We have everybody go through the training who's on growth or delivery, because it's not just the sellers, it's the people delivering the work, the consultants on the ground, and they have to learn the narrative, put it into their own words, record themselves giving that presentation. We give them a piece of very exclusive swag, so it's an exciting thing to do, but it's those basic programs to help you control. You do have to put the guardrails in place to teach people about the brand.
Well, and it's understanding the brand and also being able to speak the language that you want them at different stages of the buying journey. When you've got a services team that also is, in one way or another, part of the sales process, right? That's a whole nother unique thing to try to manage. And I don't think people always understand how different that is to manage that in a services business.
Yeah, and a big part of that is understanding the buyer. I was recently at a meeting and was hearing people give their own perspectives about the buyer, how long things take, what people need, where their challenges lie. And it was amazing to me the difference of opinion that existed across groups, across regions, across tenure within the organization. And so I saw it as an opportunity to go out and say, we need to create our own state of the buyer report. And I think it's important for businesses to step back, and even in marketing and brand roles, to have that strategic place to say, I'm not just tactic driven. I'm bringing the voice of the buyer back into the business, just as I'm bringing the voice of the business out to the buyer. So really document for everybody, these are the facts. These are the facts of who we're selling to and what they need from us and how we need to deliver, so that we're all operating in the same direction towards that main purpose of growth.
I think it's clear to most people here that robots are going to start doing more and more of the work over time. And I expect that services businesses might be at the forefront of teaching all of us how to really lean in and leverage the human condition and the unique human experience that can differentiate you versus someone else in the buying experience. You mentioned this a little bit before we got going. Talk a little bit about how important it is to fully optimize the human as part of the experience.
Yeah. So especially here where we're hearing about AI and the impact and how fast it's all coming, every marketer is going to have this super power behind them, this AI superpower. We are going to be creating content faster, more personalized. You're going to have every tool in the world connected, sending everything together. And if all of us have that, what is the differentiator in how that content lands and the experience that somebody's having with you? So it's almost like the human EQ, the company EQ, as you are interacting, is your differentiator now. You can create the very best content in the world, but so is everybody else because they're all using AI to do it. You can be the fastest, but now so is everybody else. They're all using AI to be fast. But can you be the people that understand your buyer the very best and have that true, genuine trust, credibility, connection, and relationship with them? That will differentiate you and your brand.
Love it. Carrie Penny, SVP and Global Head of Brand and Content at Valtech. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Matt. Have a good one.
You too.